Oh, is my camera going to start? There it goes. Hello, everyone. Welcome. TJ here with Dead History, and I'm here with a very special guest this evening, Mr. Kurt Deion. Kurt, how are you, sir?
I'm hanging in there. I mean, now that I've seen a photo of myself at Hannibal Hamlin's grave while Highway to Hell was playing, I mean, what more could anybody ask for out of life, TJ?
This is very.
That goes together like peanut butter and jelly.
It really does. It truly does. So yeah, I love my song choice usually most of the time. So of course, Kurt Deion joins us tonight. A very special guest. Kurt, of course, of kurtzhistoricsites.com, his wonderful website, where Kurt basically chronicles all his grave hunting adventures and categorizes all of the different graves that he has visited over the years. It's a truly wonderful, wonderful website. I mean that sincerely. Not saying that because Kurt's a friend. I truly do enjoy it. And it really is for anybody that is getting into this kind of quirky hobby of grave hunting. Kurt's website is definitely a place to use for a lot of very, very great information and photos and that sort of thing. So Kurt joins us tonight because him and I are going to be, just like we did with the presidential grave sites in the past, Kurt and I are going to be tonight grading the vice presidential grave sites. So Kurt and I have both visited all of the vice president grave sites, but myself, with the exception of one. But Kurt actually has visited that grave site. We'll get into that in a little while.
I'm still going to give you an asterisk with Harry Truman anyway, as it is.
Oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. I stood outside the place.
Your eyes did not see the stone.
You're right. I actually did not. Kurt is right about that. When I was traveling during the pandemic, the Truman Library not only was closed for COVID, but it was also it was actually during its renovation. So it was not open. So I wasn't able to go into the courtyard there to actually see the stones of Mr. and Mrs. Truman. But, you know, I was probably within 100 feet or so of it. But it doesn't count. It is an asterisk. Kurt is Ford fricking me right now with the Maris 61 asterisk.
Yes, we baseball fans will get that. And thank you for giving up watching your fifth place Orioles tonight for this event. And I've sacrificed watching my fourth place Red Sox.
Yes.
So we're making big sacrifices here. But luckily for you, anyway, Truman isn't going to come into play tonight because you and I decided that we're not going to incorporate the presidents who were previously vice president in our vice presidential grave grade. And we're considering those like Truman, George H.W. Bush. We already did those last September. A lot of them, I feel like anyway, would have a bit of a step up on most of the other vice presidents who weren't president. So it didn't really seem fair to grade them again. Plus, less we want you to get to bed earlier this time. We can't go on 3 hours like last time. So instead of the 42 possible graves that we could be going over, it's just going to be 28. 28 vice presidents who currently have graves who were not president of the United States.
Absolutely. Very good point. Like Kurt just pointed out, only the vice presidents who never became or held the office of the president is what we're grading tonight. Obviously, we'll touch on it when we get there later, but Mondale, we know he passed away. He is going to be interred.
That'll be how we end. That's how we're going to end.
But we haven't seen him. So we're going to jump right in here. It's going to be the same type thing. What's going to happen is I'm going to share my screen. We'll bring up our tier maker, obviously grades A through F. We're actually going to be going in the order of the death date order. So in the order that these vice presidents passed away is how Kurt is going to go down his list. Kurt's going to basically give us his grade. I'll show a photo of that grave site on the screen so you guys can kind of see. And then we'll just go from there, and then we'll see if there's any questions at the end. So without any further ado, Kurt, shall we get this rolling or what?
Yep, sounds good. Let's jump in.
All right. Let me just share my screen here. So everybody can see that. Kurt, you can see that, the tier maker up there?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Okay, so here it is in death order, of course. So Kurt, if you want to take it away, and I believe the first one we're going to be starting with will be Mr. George Clinton. So if you want to take it away.
So George Clinton, the first vice president under James Madison, and the first vice president to die in office. And he was actually also vice president under Jefferson as well. His second term, Burr was gone for some obvious reasons, if you know your American history of that era. So Clinton dies in office. He's buried originally at Congressional Cemetery in Washington, D.C. Then in 1908, they disassemble his monument, disinter him, and bring him up to Kingston, New York, and that's where he's buried today. And probably, honestly, TJ, this might be that we might be starting off with the best one of the 28, and we can all go home after this. But
wow.
Yeah, I don't know. This is an A grave from Vice President George Clinton here. Wow.
So you're telling me that this grave right here on the screen, that is George Clinton's grave there in Kingston, New York. You're giving him an A, correct?
I'm giving him an A. I don't think you're going to object to that.
No, I don't actually. Yeah, I think Clinton's is one of the better ones. I agree. Just one thing I do want to just kind of say that we didn't preface real quick. You have to understand, guys, the way that we're grading this, obviously aesthetics and, you know, how it looks, we're taking that into consideration, but we're kind of grading all these on a curve because, like Kurt kind of alluded to, they're not nearly as grand or as magnificent as some of the presidential grave sites, you know, the Garfields, the Grants and such. So you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt that, you know, they're kind of like the common man's type gravesite, but some of them are definitely more upscale than that, than just kind of the common person. So we're kind of grading it on a little bit of a curve, but I agree, Kurt, as far as the vice presidents go, I think we keep George Clinton right there at an A grade. So I agree.
So Clinton's grave, it's 6,000 pounds, and it's made of Indiana limestone.
Wow. I had no idea about that. Wow.
So it's so it took a bit to disassemble it and move it from Washington, D.C. to the Hudson River Valley in New York, but has a bas relief likeness of him on there. It's got a lengthy epitaph, and so he's at the Old Dutch Church, and although he didn't really have much of a personal connection there, I believe it was his in-laws' church, the Tappins, but a lot of the other burials there are soldiers who served under Clinton when he was a general in the American Revolution. So that's at least a little bit of a personal connection there, that he has some ties to, if not the location, some of the other people who are buried there. But yeah, I mean, you can see there's a photo of me standing next to it in May 2010. I was 15 at the time, and you know, so that it's a good sized monument. Again, 6,000 pounds Indiana limestone. That is, it's hard to see in that photo there because of the tree bark behind it, but at the top it's topped with a metal torch.
Yeah, so I think you kind of see it a little bit better in my photo. There you go.
Well, you know what, TJ? I think that tree's gone.
That tree's gone, yeah.
That tree is totally gone. It's not just a matter of, it's not in, you know, doesn't have his leaves on. That tree is gone.
That tree is gone. Very good call, yeah. So, yes, very cool. I agree with you. I would definitely put Clinton as an A grade for sure. And one quick thing I do want to touch on, Kurt. Now, I know, you know, you started off the presidential gravesite, you know, hunting and doing this hobby when you were about 8 or 9 years old. What was your actual, you know, not counting a president, not counting like Adams or someone or Jefferson, what was your first actual vice presidential gravesite that you went to, and how old were you?
Well, that's going to be the fourth one on our list, and it was pretty quick because it was Aaron Burr, who's in the same cemetery as Grover Cleveland. But that still wasn't my, I'm going to get all the vice presidents
moment.
Grave.
Okay.
So I'll when we get to that vice president, I'll explain a bit there. But why don't we keep the flow going and
let's go. Let's go to Elbridge Gerry.
Yep. So it's be noted that his last name is Gerry, like garage or garbage with a hard G, but we call the term of changing borders for districts, voting regions as gerrymandering, like jelly or giraffe. Well, jelly, has the J with that J sound. Giraffe, the soft G with the G sound, like we say, gerrymandering. So Gerry, gerrymandering. So probably should be gerrymandering, but here we are. And there's no going back at this point.
That's true. So there it is on the screen there. This Gerry's gravesite there is at the Congressional Cemetery in Washington, D.C. Very beautiful, magnificent cemetery. I know it's one of Kurt's personal favorite cemeteries. So, Kurt, what are you thinking here for Elbridge Gerry?
Well, some details first. I'll lead with that. So this is 12 feet tall. It's made of marble. And this commemorates Elbridge Gerry, who was the second vice president to die in office. Both of Madison's vice presidents died in office. And Elbridge Gerry, dying in 1814, is the only vice president interred in Washington, D.C. He's also the only signer of the Declaration of Independence interred in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. That smaller marker that you see at the foot there, that says that he was the only signer of the Declaration of Independence interred in the District of Columbia. So that's a nice little extra touch explaining that. That's from the 1980s. I believe it was 1988 that was placed there.
Yeah,
but 12 feet tall. Yeah, 12 feet tall, made of marble. It was put forth, the idea for the funding was put forth by Senator James Lloyd of Massachusetts in 1823. And Elbridge Gerry was from Massachusetts. So it passed through Congress. And then they contracted William and John Frazee of New York to sculpt this. And they spent, I believe, I'm correct, they spent 2 months just carving the Grecian vase at the top.
Yep.
So now it was also going to have a likeness of Gerry, just like Clinton's did. Now, keep in mind, remember, Clinton was originally buried in the same cemetery in Washington, D.C. His has a likeness. They were also going to put a likeness of Gerry on his monument, but then for cost reasons, it was excluded. All the same, Elbridge Gerry gets an A from my favorite cemetery of all time, where, to be honest, I've decided, I'm pretty sure that's where I would like to be buried myself one day.
Yep.
I've even got an area with where there's different plots available. They had a sign that said, "Well, I guess I need to save up unless they have an installment plan." But so that's a goal. So and maybe end up in that cemetery someday. I love the dog walking association that, so there's all these different historical figures. You got Cokie Roberts, who I've actually met in person, and I recently visited her grave a few months ago. Vice President J. Edgar Hoover, John Philip Sousa, Belva Lockwood, who ran for president in the 1800s. You got a Lincoln assassination conspirator. Great cemetery. I'm not factoring most of those things I just mentioned into my judgment. I do like the fact that I can be at Gerry's grave and dogs will run up to me and want to greet me. But it's an A grave on its own anyway.
Yeah, I agree. So I don't disagree at all. It's one of my favorites, actually. It's one of those, I have an interesting story. The cemetery was closed when I went in 2020. And I had to hop the little wall there. So when I took this photo you're seeing on your screen, I was kind of had the whole cemetery to myself. But yeah, it's one of my favorites. So I agree. We're starting off really just with two guys that are going to be real hard to top here, Kurt, with 2 A grades. And moving along, now we go to Daniel D. Tompkins, a guy who many people outside of maybe from the reference during Miracle on 34th Street, not many people have ever even heard his name. So what about Tompkins?
Well, Santa Claus is going to get a D on that because that was not an accurate attribution. It should have been, so Daniel D. Tompkins was James Monroe's vice president, not John Quincy Adams, as is intimated in that movie. And you know who else I'm giving a D? Daniel D. Tompkins. We're going from the A's to D's. And now, granted, the picture you've got there makes it look a bit better than when I visited in 2011, but I can only go off of when I visited. And you can see there's a lot more dirt back then, looked a bit more downtrodden. If you look the tree behind me over my left shoulder, in that little area, there's some of those like rubber puzzle piece mats like I've got in my basement. So, I don't know what the purpose, like were people sitting there for lunch or something, or, they were trying to dig. So I don't know what, if those actually had a purpose and somebody left it there for some reason, but, it didn't look that great. Now, at least when you went, looks like it's a little bit nicer around there. What's saving him from an F is by the entrance, a little bit to the left of that bell, is there's a bust of Daniel D. Tompkins. Now, I think it's an awful looking bust, but at least it's a little bit of a flair at St. Mark's Church in the Bowery here. Another thing is there's only two people mentioned on the grave. It's Tompkins and his father-in-law, Mangle Minthorn. But there's other people buried there, such as Tompkins' wife. So it's a bit who now, of course, kind of hypocritically, I'm going to unfortunately forget her name. But you know what? I wouldn't forget it had it been on the grave. And that's part of the problem is that, a little bit of a patriarchal, only the important men of the family should have their names on this grave kind of thing. So, so I'm going to give it a D.
Okay. I'm going to agree with you actually on this grade. So far we agree because the other reason, beside all of the reasonings that you gave, which I agree with, I think even accessibility too plays a factor for myself, because when I went in 2020, of course the church was closed due to COVID, so that's understandable. It's a global pandemic, but even after it reopened and they were holding in-person church services, I literally almost had to bribe the one of the church patrons at the gate to get into the church grounds where you would actually enter the church, because there is a church kind of directly where I'm standing taking this photo. The church is directly behind me. And, they weren't really even letting anybody into the grounds itself to really walk around or be out there. So, I think accessibility, I know it's obviously gated and fenced off. It's not open 24/7. It's only open certain days throughout the week.
If you want to visit Daniel D. Tompkins at 4 a.m., then accessibility isn't your problem. You've got other problems.
You know what I mean by 20. It's just the accessibility is pretty poor. It's not just like a cemetery where you can kind of stroll into even at 7 o'clock in the morning when the sun's coming up. It's something that is very limited. So I think that plays a role too in the grading there. So I agree with you on Tompkins. Gets a D. Now, technically, the next two in death order would be Jefferson and Adams, who we are skipping, of course, died on the same day, very, very famously on July 4th of 1826. But we're skipping them because they were presidents, and we're moving on to Jefferson's good buddy, and I say that sarcastically, Aaron Burr. So take it away, Kurt.
So Aaron Burr, sir, is interred in Princeton Cemetery in Princeton, New Jersey. And I visited 3 times. The first when I was 9. There's a photo of me with a terrible pose there, wearing my shirt that I just got from being down in Washington, D.C., seeing Ronald Reagan Lion State. Revisited in 2010. And then with you, TJ, it's coming up on 3 months ago. We attended the wreath laying ceremony for President Grover Cleveland's birthday. And I'm going to say now, again, this is all for fun. This doesn't matter in the grand scheme of the universe, this thing that we're doing tonight. I hate to burst both of our, but so I'm saying, this doesn't have, it's not super imperative. Like, we are in control of what we decide, the grading criteria is. And I gotta say, my third visit now, coming after the Hamilton musical, all the hoopla and the hype and everything. It was interesting this time to see all the different grave goods or, trinkets or tokens left at Aaron Burr's grave that had, some references to the musical. So the first 2 times I went, there was nothing. There was nothing. It was totally barren. And now, Aaron Burr wasn't necessarily the greatest person. I'm not a fan of his leading to the filibuster. I'm not a fan of his treason trial, shooting Hamilton, lots of things. But I'm going to say that bumped it up to a C for me. Just the quote unquote fans or the visitors bumped it up to a C for me from a D, because at least the grave, it does say that he was vice president, that he served in the American Revolution. After this grave got worn, they did put a plaque down below in the 1990s, I believe it was, by the Aaron Burr Association, because that's a thing that exists for some reason. And so this transcribes the increasingly illegible inscription on the original stone. So I, not the best, not the worst. I think it's a C. Helped now by Lin-Manuel Miranda and the fans that he created.
Well, I will say that I would have given it a C right off the bat, maybe even a very, very low end B. Only reason, I agree, it's nothing spectacular, but I think this is almost, my grading would be almost more on a sentimental level. I agree with everything you said. Aaron Burr was a pretty terrible person, to be honest, but it's the first one that I ever saw as far as a vice president goes. As the story goes, my first presidential gravesite was Grover Cleveland, which is, 50 yards from where we're seeing this Burr gravesite in the Princeton Cemetery in Princeton, New Jersey. When I first went to Cleveland, I didn't realize that Burr and John Witherspoon were right there. So after I kind of was home after visiting Cleveland, I realized that. And a few days later, I went back to Princeton Cemetery and I saw Burr. I, like Kurt, have been there. I think I've been there like 4 times now, 4 or 5 times, and visited. So I guess it just holds a little sentimental value for me. So I will agree. We'll keep it right there at C. But I probably have it more on the higher level of a C grade. But I agree. I agree there, Kurt. And now moving on, we move on to probably an even worse person than Aaron Burr. And that would be Vice President John C. Calhoun. So take it away, Kurt.
John C. Calhoun, I've got nothing good to say about. So, I mean, if you read some of his writings, I mean, not necessarily as bad as Vice President of the Confederacy, Alexander Stephens, but that's not saying anything, because that's some of the most repugnant and vile racist talk you'll ever see from Stephens. Calhoun, not that much better. Calhoun, not a great person in my judgment. The grave, he's buried in Charleston, South Carolina. Interestingly, like a lot of these early vice presidents are not interred with their spouses. Clinton, Gary, and Calhoun is another one. His wife, Fluoride, is that, yes, Fluoride, known for her connection to the Petticoat affair. She's in Pendleton, South Carolina. He's in Charleston, in an area that a lot of the, elite, wealthy, white male, often, slave-owning politicians are interred. So he's in a place where you would expect him to be. Charleston, for all, it's complicated and often, bleak history pre-Civil War. It is a visually beautiful place. This is a nice cemetery. Interestingly, he's been buried there since he died in the 1850s, with the exception of then during the Civil War, when Charleston was under siege. He was disinterred. He was relocated across the street. Confederates were worried that Union troops might desecrate his grave or his body, given that he had been such a symbol of the quote-unquote states' rights doctrine, pro-slavery, slavery was a good thing, mantra prior to the war, that he would be, that his grave would be desecrated. So they moved him across the street. Then when the danger had cleared, they moved him back. And then this current monument was placed in the 1880s. I'm giving it a B. I mean, it's got some flourishes. It's in a nice location. I am actually going to give it props for the fact that it doesn't say how great and grand and glorious he was and put some quotes about, he was, martyr for states' rights or something like a lot of the antebellum and Civil War era individuals might do. So, it just says Secretary of War, Vice President, Secretary of State. So it's sizable. It's got, it's got those little columns carved into it. Nice location, and isn't too fancy and flourishing in its inscription so as to be revisionist history. So B.
I agree with the B grade. I actually love Charleston. I agree with everything you're saying. It's a magnificent city. I really loved it. I was there, of course, during the pandemic. Another cemetery that was closed that I had to find my way into.
I've heard even not during the pandemic, I've heard lots of trials and tribulations of people getting into that.
Yeah. So it's kind of one of those cemeteries in areas that, sometimes is not often accessible. So that kind of knocks it down for me. But yeah, I agree. B, I think it's pretty, grand and big, but nothing overly magnificent about it. Just kind of plain and bland, just rather large. Now, and also, I know you said Calhoun's wife, Gary's wife, Clinton's wife, and Calhoun's wife, who's in Pendleton, I believe she's on a family estate or something like that. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yeah. It would be more ingrained in my mind if I had actually visited her. Yeah. But I've haven't been to South Carolina all that much.
Yeah.
Maybe again, if it's accessible, maybe a future time.
Yeah. But Charleston, great place. Anyone who loves history, definitely give Charleston a look, because it's a wonderful place and city, and rather interesting with a lot of history there. So agreed on the B grade. And now we move on to my old Kentucky home, as the song goes, and Richard Mentor Johnson. So let's move on there, Kurt. Well, what do you have to say about Johnson's grave?
Well, this is going to be another A. This is right up there. I was being a little too dismissive when I said everybody could tune out after George Clinton, because I was forgetting about Richard Mentor Johnson here. This is another A. This is at Frankfort Cemetery in Frankfort, Kentucky. This is where a lot of the Kentucky notables were buried in the 19th century, 1800s. And I mean, he's got this column. There's an eagle with a wreath in its beak, and the column has a flag draped over it. There's the shields there that you can see carved into it. You might also be thinking this is a little bit similar to another vice president's grave, actually a grave that came after this one. Vice President Andrew Johnson, also President of the United States. You think about his with the obelisk draped in the flag with the eagle up top. So there's some interesting similarities there. But so that's me and Richard Mentor Johnson. So he's got this bas relief with the even not just like the head and neck, but the whole like bust, shoulder area. He's got on the other side. So he is reputed to be the military figure who killed the indigenous leader Tecumseh at the Battle of Thames during Tecumseh's War, which intersected with the War of 1812. And that scene, whether truthful or apocryphal, that was used for some, campaigning, weight during when he was running for office. They parlayed it into helping him get into political office. And that scene is depicted on his grave. It's something that I wrote in my book that I'm trying to get published. It's something like you'd see in Parks and Rec and like the Pawnee, town hall, something where it's like all the like this graphic, inappropriate, scene, and you're just, oh my God, they thought, back in the 1800s Kentucky, they thought that this was an appropriate and good thing to put on this grave. So regardless of that, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
They put so much detail into, so this is an A.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think it's absolutely wonderful, magnificent. And the Frankfurt Cemetery, for any of you that have never been, it's a beautiful, beautiful cemetery. And where Johnson's grave is kind of climb up toward the top of a hill almost, where not far from there it's Daniel Boone. Am I correct? Is it Boone?
Yes, with his grave also depicting him in deadly skirmishes with Native Americans. So that's a theme. That's a theme there, and
it is. And the
obviously doesn't hold up in the 21st century, but they're visually interesting art pieces where you're thinking, okay, this is how, again, they wanted or they thought these people could or should be commemorated in the 1800s.
Well, it's amazing too, because like when you're at Boone's grave and, even not far from Johnson's grave, there's just this beautiful view of a river, and across you can actually see the state capitol building of Kentucky.
I took a picture from there. I'm sure you probably did too, but the pictures don't do it justice.
No, they really don't. It's absolutely magnificent. It truly is. Truly, like you said, in 8th grade, but one of my favorites of all time actually was this grave. So definitely one that I recommend to everyone. If you're in Kentucky and you're in that Frankfurt area and you can get there, I would go, because it's truly a magnificent, magnificent place. So definitely an 8th grade for me. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Now, Kurt, what else? Now we have to move on to a rather interesting one. I think this is where we might finally differ a little bit on our opinions, but we're going to move on to William Rufus King, his grave. So why don't you take it away there?
Well, that's interesting. You think we're going to differ, since obviously you didn't share your grades, I didn't share mine. So, yeah, it's a rather plain mausoleum overall. I think although there is a flourish of I believe it's a lion on the metal door. There's some weeping willows around it in Selma, Alabama, of which William Rufus Devane King was a founder. One nice touch that he does have there, as well as out front, there is that historical marker that gives at least a little more context to who he was. I graded this on the lower end. I put this at a D, actually.
So I told you we would differ.
Yeah.
I do differ. I'll tell you, I agree with you with it being rather plain. It is kind of a small mausoleum, but there was something, I don't know, that really struck me about this gravesite. And I've talked to, of course, the man who wrote the book, literally, on William Rufus King and James Buchanan. And that's Dr. Thomas Balcerski, of course. And I've expressed to him that it was actually one of my favorite gravesites, vice presidential-wise, that I visited. And I don't know if it was just the quaintness of, how like small and just kind of obscure this cemetery is, but this like Spanish moss hanging off the trees. I really, really liked it. I wouldn't go like as far as saying it's an A grade, but I would have to put it kind of more middle of the pack. At like a C.
I could be amenable to a C.
Okay, all right. We can meet in the middle there. I don't know. There's just something quaint about it that I liked. I did actually. The reason that you probably saw me on my phone a bit, and the reason I was trying to upload this discreetly, just going back a little bit. This is that depiction that you were speaking about on Richard Mentor Johnson's gravesite.
Now his head is missing.
His head is gone. Yes.
But I mean, look at the artistic detail in that, and also if you look, the columns are cannons.
Yep.
And again, he's not somebody who I think I would like personally. What I know about his politics ethics, and also again the nuances of the battles with the Native Americans, but. It's a very intriguing art piece of a grave, and that's why that's an A. Not as many flourishes on King, but a C is fine for King.
Yeah. So we'll go with a C for King. I just couldn't do a D. There's just something about it that I like, but I understand your argument with King. There it is one last time. Now we're moving on from King. Obviously, Tyler's in there, Van Buren's in there, both those guys are presidents. We move on to a very unknown, probably a lot of you maybe even watching this are saying, who? And that's George Mifflin Dallas, who's buried not far from me in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So, Kurt, take it away.
This is an F for me, TJ. This is pretty at the bottom there. This is the George Mifflin Dallas family plot. He's interred there with a bunch of different members of his family. His inscription is all the way at the top. Overall, they're just listed in order of death, not entirely, but mostly that's the order it's going in, and it's just his name, born, died, and same as everybody else. I do like the fact that when you go into the graveyard there, boom, it's right there. You walk in and there's no difficulty finding him as long as the gate is unlocked for the church there in Philadelphia. But there's nothing going on here.
I have to agree with you. I definitely think he's our first F. When I was started out, deciding I'm going to do the vice presidents, as well as all the other things that I was trying to accomplish. I was like, oh, he's right in Philly. No big deal. It's only maybe 50 minutes, maybe an hour, depending on traffic. There was no traffic then. It was 2020 pandemic time for me. And when I went there, I, got into the cemetery and I'm like, wow, this is a beautiful old church. Look at this building. And then I saw this gravesite and I said, really? This is it? So I agree. Very underwhelming. Not even a mention at all, as you said, not a mention at all of him being vice president of the United States. So not only a man who's very obscure just by name, a man that you would never know as vice president if you stumbled upon his gravesite. That's for sure.
And a mayor of Philadelphia.
He was, yes.
He was buried in Philadelphia, and they have no mention of that either. So, but, was that a personal, choice, by him, by the family? Okay, we're all just going to get equal treatment on here, which, could be its own, statement. Absolutely. But without that information, I'm just going to go with it's rather bland and enough.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure, I don't remember from my video, but I'm pretty sure he was a lawyer. I'm almost positive he was. And he did have an office right in Philadelphia because obviously he lived there. And there's nothing standing of it. Now, Philadelphia is obviously very well known for its old historical buildings, Independence Hall, of course, and many, many other churches and such. So it's not short of its old historic buildings still standing to this day. But it's not even just the fact that the building or the house or whatever it was is gone. There's no mention of it. There's no plaque that says, on this site was the law office or whatever it may have been of George Mifflin Dallas. There's nothing. There's basically no mention of this man who was vice president. So,
well, I think we've said too much anyway. Yeah. So let's move on to Breckenridge.
Breckenridge is next. So here we go. Breckenridge. This is going to be an interesting one to see what you give it, because my grade's probably differing from yours. But go ahead, Kurt.
Well, Breckenridge, vice president under James Buchanan. He's buried in Lexington Cemetery in Lexington, Kentucky. Now, his grave there, the inscription has become increasingly unreadable. That is, I mean, that's something that you would expect on certain types of stone over time. So that's in April 2010 right there.
And I said, so I'm 10 years later, Kurt, it looks like it's been cleaned.
Yeah, and I on Instagram, I follow a lot of different accounts who are dedicated to cleaning stones. They get permission. They have, the special equipment, tools, chemicals that they know won't damage the. So don't ever just go up and randomly start like scrubbing or cleaning a stone. Or without permission or without doing your homework of what was. But it looks like whoever did that, hopefully again with consent of the cemetery and or family, knew what they were doing. I believe on that stone. Now, if you had a more of a sideways view, you could see that grave is kind of like an unfurled scroll. So that's a little nice flourish. Also noted Calhoun, sorry, not Calhoun, a different John C. Breckenridge we got here. He was one of the members of Congress 14, I believe, that were expelled for their support of the Confederacy and secession. And then he went on to be a Confederate general. So that's unfortunate. Now, so there's going to be two differences from our visits.
Yeah, I know. I already know the glaring one. So why don't you say it, Kurt?
Well, so aside from the cleaning that we've talked about, in 2018, 8 years after I visited, they added a statue of him right nearby. It's not standing right at the plot. It's a few yards away, in view of it. So this was part of the relocation of Confederate monuments. So, which is something that I support, taking them away from more commemorative public places, and if possible, adding context to them in a museum exhibit. But that it's always difficult with space, structural. Like can the area support the weight of the statue or the base or whatnot? A monetary situation. So that's one of the possibilities I like. Another one that I personally have been okay with is if they want to take a monument and put it at like that specific person's gravesite, like on in a private cemetery or something. So I think that this was an acceptable outcome for me of the relocation of this as compared to the downtown laudatory spot that it was, really honoring him as a member of the Confederacy, and fighting to keep people enslaved because of the race. So not something that I would have been a fan of downtown. In the cemetery, I'm okay with it. It obviously jazzes it up a bit.
It does. So what do you give it?
Well, you know what? I'm going to, from my visit, I had it at a D. If because of that enhancement, it's been cleaned, there's the statue, you'd like to put it at a C, you can go ahead and put him at a C.
I think so. I think so. There's two reasons real quick for me. The statue, of course, definitely puts it there. But also the fact of just where it's at. Lexington Cemetery, as you and I have discussed, Kurt, probably, if not my favorite, one of my top 3 favorite cemeteries I ever visited. I loved it. I think Lexington.
I got locked in there. So
yeah, I know you did. It's a beautiful, beautiful cemetery. It's very large, but it's beautiful. I really enjoyed my visit here. Henry Clay is also.
Monument. The Clay Monument.
Yeah, Yeah, I loved it. So,
And I got to go back for Jim Varney as a Toy Story.
Yeah, I have
fan,
him. I have good old Slinky Dog and Ernest.
I don't care about Ernest. I just care about Slinky.
Very cool. But yes, there you go. So Breckenridge will put it a C. Now we move on. We have a few presidents, and we finally get to somebody near and dear to my heart, of course, and that is Mr. Henry Wilson. So take it away, Kurt.
Near and dear to your heart and F in my heart. So I mean, so he's that little one with the flag there. He's the closest vice president to me. I'm in Rhode Island. He's in Natick, Massachusetts.
About how far, Kurt?
Pardon me?
About how far does it take you to get to Natick, roughly?
Probably an hour.
Okay.
I don't go to Natick that much. So,
yeah.
If there's no traffic, an hour.
Okay.
His son, who was a veteran of the Civil War, is also buried in the same plot, and he has a more elaborate monument with his hat carved onto it and everything, or sculpted onto it, and is really interesting. Now, Wilson's is just it's just that little monument. Now, I believe probably after you visited, they had added a little plaque there.
Oh, really? Okay.
That was there on my second visit. I've been twice, I believe, but my first visit there in 2009 on my way to a Red Sox game, not so much. And it's just hard to see. It's small. You never know much of anything was going on there. He's somebody also who overall, I think I'd agree with his politics and his stance on Reconstruction. So he's also somebody who, due to that, I would almost like to have a little bit more of an elaborate grave. Whereas I was giving Calhoun props for, okay, it looks nice, but at least it doesn't have all these revisionist flourishes. I feel like Wilson's is way too humble. I think it needs more, and I think if it could have some inspirational quote about justice or something on there, that'd be cool. So he deserves better, I think, for his time in Congress, and for that he's getting enough.
I agree. So it's very underwhelming. It's nothing magnificent. The only reason that I would want it at a D is because this photo that's on the screen, that was a photo that was actually used in a local newspaper article that was written about me driving all over the place during the pandemic, visiting the presidents and vice presidents and declaration signers and all these things. And that was the photo on the front page of the Asbury Park Press here in New Jersey that was used as the photo you're seeing on your screen. So it kind of just has a sentimental value to me. I agree that as far as just aesthetically and everything, it should be an F. I'd put it at a D just because of that, but I'm okay leaving it at an F because I agree it's pretty underwhelming. So,
as Bruce Springsteen said in his song on Greetings from Asbury Park, you're blinded by the nostalgia.
I am blinded by the nostalgia. It's absolutely 100% correct. So moving on, before I get even more nostalgic, we're moving on to Indiana, to South Bend, and that is Schuyler Colfax. So why don't you take it away, Kurt?
So Schuyler Colfax, vice president under Ulysses S. Grant, just like Henry Wilson was. And I put this at a D. Well,
you and I have different here. And the only reason I would put it at a D or an F, because the picture you're seeing, everyone, on the screen is my visit there to Colfax's grave. It was actually right around sunset. The sun was going down. You see it there. Now you see mine. That's my picture. Now take a look at Kurt's and notice there's an angel at the top. Well, since Kurt visited, Kurt, what year is this here at Colfax?
That is April 2010.
So you're talking a 10-year difference, 2010 to 2020 when I visited. Someone has hacked off and stolen that angel. That angel is no longer there. It's missing. So I almost feel like if the angel was there, I would put it at a D. But since the angel is missing, I would have put it at an F. So Do you want to go D and just meet there? Is that fine with you?
Yeah, I'd like to put it at D. There is another, little smaller marker plaque there that
is,
at
yep.
least says something. So that's nice. But I'm gonna tell you something. I don't know if you are aware of this or not, TJ, and if this would impact you at all. But so I learned after that angel went missing, sometime between 2010 and 2020. I believe the cemetery said there were no plans to replace it because it turns out it wasn't original to the stone. That like at some point somebody just tacked that on there.
So they just placed it on top, is what you're saying,
right? So I don't know, had they done some adhesive or something to it, but as you saw it is how it was originally made.
Interesting,
actually.
Wow.
So that's why. So whether it was stolen, broke off, whichever. At the time, the cemetery said that they had no plans to replace it because it was just kind of something that had been put on there, and I guess they left. If I'm understanding the situation correctly.
That's interesting. So yeah, there you go. Then I definitely would have it at a D, if not an F. So,
but let's be honest, it looks way better with the angel.
It does. Well, that's the thing. It gives it kind of a little, little flair to it, so to speak. So definitely, I agree. Yeah. So moving on, we move on to another guy that's buried in Indiana, and that's Thomas Hendricks. So Hendricks, why don't you take that away?
Hendricks, let's say a vice president who didn't serve as vice president very long. He was just a few months in 1885, Grover Cleveland's first term. Shout out to the Grover Cleveland Art Appreciation Society out in Colorado. I was kind of torn on this one, B or a C. Now, This was one that I haven't seen in a long time. I haven't seen this in 18 years.
Wow.
It was August 2004, the only time I've been to Crown Hill Cemetery in Indianapolis, Indiana. And so it's kind of hard for me to precisely judge the height of it. I mean, look, I'm 9 there. And,
was it raining, Kurt?
What gives you that impression? So it was raining. Has a decent height to it.
Oh, it's pretty tall.
Hendricks, not somebody who I think he had some pretty deplorable politics at times. I think again, so I'm like almost glad it doesn't have like a super amount of say like flourishes of like he was the greatest that ever lived or whatever, but it's got it's got his name, got the dates, and nothing. I can't recall if on any of the other faces it says member of Congress or vice president or governor or what.
Yeah, I don't recall off the top of my head either.
Do I want to change my? You know what? I had him on here as a B. I'm going to call an audible and put him at C. Unless how are you feeling?
I think I could go with C. I think the height is definitely impressive. I mean, I would think that thing is about 25 feet high or so. It's pretty tall. So I would think the height is definitely impressive. There's really nothing overall wow about it. So I'm fine with the C. I think we keep it there at a C.
All right, I'm good to move on to Wheeler if you want.
Okay, and now we go to a guy where you're going to be driving for a bit if you want to go visit this man, and that is Vice President William Wheeler. So take it away, Kurt. This one's way out of the way. Go ahead.
I remember my father. This was 12 years ago. We were up there, and he was only 50 at the time, and my dad said, "Well, I'm never coming back here again."
Yeah,
that's how.
I mean.
It's up by the Canadian border.
Yes, there's actually a sign because I believe this is Malone, New York is the town. Yeah. And there's a sign in Malone, which is a very small town, that says US Canadian border. It's not far. I mean, probably like 30 miles or so. It's not very far.
I don't think it's even that far.
It's not even that far. Exactly.
I don't believe so. But and when we're saying near Canada, we don't mean like Buffalo and Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
We mean like upper part of New York.
Upper part of New York State, yes.
So there's at least some signs pointing the way, so they're bringing attention to Wheeler's gravesite there at Morningside Cemetery in Malone. It's got some flourishes, some carved detail in the top there, and it does say he was vice president. Says he was a rep in Congress for 5 terms. Legislature. It's it's a low B. I would put it in the low B range.
It's funny that you say. I was actually going to give it a B because yes, I agree. I think it's actually kind of a nice looking stone. But I know it's crazy far and just ridiculously out of the way for anyone unless you live in way upstate New York. And I don't know. There's just something, again, kind of quaint. I'll use that word. Just kind of quaint about it. I enjoyed it.
The thing is, as far as the accessibility, the grave itself in the cemetery, I feel, is pretty accessible if you're in the area. So yes, I personally, sometimes I think there's a difference between this person happened to live and die in a relatively remote spot versus like the cemetery itself is on lockdown.
Agreed. Yeah. So I agree. And I love the bottom, line there, a faithful public servant. I think that's pretty cool that it says that on his grave. So I agree. A B, definitely. I enjoyed Wheeler's as far away as it was. So
Fun fact. So I actually added I was after that visit. It would have been one of my first memorials that I added on the Find a Grave website, a database, was his wife, Mary Wheeler.
Okay.
Did not have a memorial on Find a Grave at that point in 2010.
Wow.
And she died just about a year before he was sworn in as vice president. So she was not second lady.
Wow. Very cool.
I added her Find a Grave memorial.
That's very cool. Very cool little tidbit. And, we go from a guy who's pretty far out of the way, driving-wise, unless you're in upstate New York, to a guy who's pretty far away, too, unless you live up in this, area. And that's somebody all the way up in Maine, and that's Hannibal Hamlin. So take it away, Kurt.
I visited them on the same trip, back-to-back days in 2010, early July.
Mine was not. My second visit was not early July, as depicted by this photo.
Christmas in July, maybe.
Yeah.
So Hamlin there, the first vice president under Abraham Lincoln. And I think the country would have been far better off, and Reconstruction in the beginning would have gone far smoother had Hannibal Hamlin become president after Lincoln's assassination instead of Andrew Johnson. But that's not what ended up happening. So Hannibal Hamlin's got that stone there. The reverse side of the large monument just says Hamlin. So one side says Hannibal Hamlin, the other side just says Hamlin. It's not hard to find in the cemetery. I mean, you can see that's the road right there behind me. And I believe there's a body of water a little bit behind, behind those trees. I needed some cleaning at that point, but it's an overall, it had been cleaned, nice looking. So I find the walkways kind of interesting there.
Yeah, I do too. The embedded words out of my mouth. Yeah, the walkways. It's got like this nice little pathway here.
Yeah, and we probably don't have a photo of it, but I think it's got a kind of a nice view.
Okay.
But if you're looking into the cemetery, so
yes,
if you're standing at the monument and kind of looking back that way, there's a nice sloping hill with some nice monuments. So I think it's in overall a nice it's in a nice spot in Maine. I was also this one. I'm also kind of torn. I think once again I'm going to call an audible that where I had it at a C, but I'd be willing to looking at the detail of the walkway and remembering the view of looking into the cemetery. Now I would put it at a low B myself.
Yeah, I agree. I think a B is a good grade for it. Yeah, I would say either very high C or low B. But I also thought, because I thought Maine was beautiful, so driving up there, I thought was really very nice. But you're right, the view from the other side, like if you're standing basically where you are, a little further behind that, looking to the direction.
Right. So where I'm looking in the photo, you get a nice view.
Yeah. Definitely. So yeah, I agree with that. So now we move on to a New Jersey guy.
Yeah.
So Garrett Hobart. So what do you think of Mr. Garrett Hobart?
Well, so I just revisited this on my in March to go see my grandparents, who might be watching this at some point. So hello. Hello, Grandma Gramps. So I drove down to see them in Florida in March, and I actually so I did a lot of stops along the way, which was a bonus because I thought if I drive, I can see lots of different places that I don't normally get to see, and I can stop and see some friends and whatnot as well, and I can I won't be locked into a like a flight if I can if I want to stay longer in a certain place. So that gave me an opportunity to revisit Garrett Hobart for the first time in 12 years. So it was pretty much as massive as I remembered it. It's a large mausoleum. You can look through the doors there. You can see a little bit inside. Now, there are certain things where I'm like, it almost, and this is going to sound weird, but, in some ways it almost strikes me as a little plain, but then I'm like, all right, it's got the columns, look at the doors, the wreaths, and it's huge. So I almost felt guilty if I didn't give it an A, but it's got to be a low A from me, like a B plus, A minus, but I'm going to give it the A minus.
I can't. So mine would be more of a B.
Okay.
If we can agree on that. The only reason I say that is because you're right. It is magnificent. It's huge. It's not, too bad. But I mean, it almost, and not that it's a bad thing because he was a vice president of the United States who almost became president. He wasn't that far away from it of becoming president. But it's just one of those. It just sticks out like a sore thumb almost in the cemetery too. All of a sudden you're driving through, it's a fairly large cemetery, and then boom, kind of on the corner of this little intersection in the cemetery, there's this giant mausoleum. So I don't know. To me, I think a B is probably better for him.
Well, I can blame the second lady for that. She was the one who was in charge of Jenny.
Jenny, yep.
So she was the one who orchestrated the construction of that monument.
100% correct. Just real quick, I just wanted to show, because I uploaded it while we were speaking, that's the view from Hannibal Hamlin from what you were saying, Kurt, from up where you can kind of see the hillside inside the cemetery. Yeah. So beautiful view. That's kind of why we gave the grade that we did to Hamlin. So just wanted to touch on that real quick. And now we move on from Hamlin to Hobart to now we move on to this is an interesting one for me, and that is James Sherman. So why don't you take it away there, Kurt?
So Sherman kind of perched up on a hill in Utica, New York, and there's some nice flourishes there, the crosses, and I know above says James Schoolcraft Sherman. You can look in there. You can see their sarcophagi of himself and the second lady. Now that monument there that you see on the right hand side, that plaque. So that I believe was not there when I first visited in April 2010. Again, if you're noticing a pattern, I got a lot of vice presidents on that one trip in April 2010. But it was there when I revisited with my father and my best friend Kelvis, who you met last year at Arlington. We visited in January 2016, and then it was there. So if I'm correct, I don't believe it was there the first time, but that adds some additional explanation of context. Okay, he was vice president of the United States. It's on I think it's a nice spot. It looks a little more, even though it's not as large as Hobart's, I think it's got more character.
I agree.
Do you get? So I would give this an A. I'd be amenable to a B if you wanted.
No, I give it an A, and I think not only does it have character and it's pretty cool, if you're standing at the doorway where Kurt is in this picture and you're looking out, there's a beautiful view because, as Kurt said, it kind of sits on top of a hilltop. And the funny story, of course, that I've told in the past is this cemetery was closed when I got there, so I had to find my way in, which I did. And it was snowy and icy from a storm overnight. And those steps were rather icy and slick. And I did a Joe Pesci right off those steps as I was walking up and just flipped back onto my backside, slipped on the ice. So kind of a funny story there. So
I remember that scene from Goodfellas. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've actually never seen Home Alone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, that's a good one. Interesting.
Also, rest in peace, Ray Liotta.
yes, very true.
I love how you responded to that by laughing like Ray Liotta in Goodfellas.
Well, he's a New Jersey guy. I guess it's just in our nature. So there you go. So now we move on from James Schoolcraft Sherman to Adlai Stevenson. So Stevenson,
the Hatchet Man.
Yeah. So why don't you take it away, Kurt, on this, in my opinion, not very grand gravesite. So go ahead.
So the one thing that there's a couple things I'm going to give for this grave, though, is that, so the whole plot, so it also incorporates now his grandson, Adlai Stevenson, the second, ran against Eisenhower twice, long-term politician and diplomat. And there's a walkway that leads up to the adjacent grave of his grandson. And both of them have, explanatory plaques on signs with their images on it as you walk up to the grave. So I think that's something nice they have going for it. The monument itself, I mean, at least it does say, it's sizable, and it does say Vice President of the United States. He himself, the Vice President, just like the other members of the family, has his own individual marker and back. I can't recall if it's a headstone or footstone, probably a headstone.
I believe it's a headstone.
Yeah, probably headstones. Yeah, I put this in the C range. I mean, it's not spectacular, but I think, if had that walkway not been there, not like it's a great special walkway or anything, but it's a little something that's personally just for their plot, and the markers with their images and some historical facts about them weren't there, I'd be more in the D range, but I could see a low C. Yeah, I mean, that's a nice plaque. That's a nice plaque, TJ.
Yeah, it is. And there's the walkway right next to it that kind of leads up to it. You can actually see it over the plaque's left hand top side there. I don't know. I mean, to me, I agree. Beautiful plaque. This cemetery, Evergreen, there in Illinois, they have a lot of these throughout the cemetery for notable people. So it's not just like Stevenson that got this plaque in this cemetery. There's a few of them that have this. To me, it's a D, but if you want to put it at C, I can agree on a C. Where do you want to go?
I'll go with a D.
Okay. D.
I have two questions for you, though.
Sure.
So, did you get the Baseball Hall of Famer that's buried there?
Yes, Rathburn or something.
I was not doing that back then overall, other than the super famous ones. So I did not. So I have to go back. I'm sitting at 60 right now. You're at 78 or 79.
I believe. Yeah, I just counted again. I think it's 79 or 80. I got to redo my count, but I just looked at it like last week. So I still have about. What are you at? 60?
60
even. I got about almost 20 on you, I think. I got close to 20 on you right now.
Yeah. So I have to get back and get him. That's one. So that's one you've got on me. And the other thing is, so since my visit 10 years ago, February 2012, when a number of trees have died there. They've had somebody go and carve,
Yes.
I guess with a chainsaw,
Correct.
the different figures that are buried there, such as infant Dorothy Louise Gage, the niece of L. Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz. That is where the name Dorothy came from. So there is Judy Garland as Dorothy and Terry as Toto, carved into what remains of a tree there. I believe also that Baseball Hall of Famer
Yeah,
has
he's got
that
a
same
carving.
treatment there.
Yep.
It looks to me like you're probably trying to dig up that photo to
Yeah.
upload right now because I
Yeah.
see you looking down. So here's the thing. I think we would agree that it would go up to a B or at least a C if a tree by Stevenson died and the Hatchet Man, and they used a hatchet to carve a likeness of the Hatchet Man Stevenson. I think that would elevate it from its present grading of a D.
I agree.
Do you agree with that? Question number 2.
I agree with it. Yes.
All right. Well, with that, I'm ready to move on to Fairbanks.
There you go, Charles Fairbanks. Go ahead.
This is another one. So there were 3 vice presidents buried at Crown Hill Cemetery in Indianapolis, Indiana, and you can see there as more proof of the rain. You can see the raindrop smudges on our family camera lens. That was actually, by the way, that was Benjamin Harrison's birthday. So President Benjamin Harrison is also buried there. So I got to visit his grave on his birthday, and it was totally unintentional because we were actually trying to visit him the day before. So we got him and the 3 vice presidents that are there. Now, that's a decently sized monument for Fairbanks.
Yep.
It's got, it's got some, different flourishes in there. I believe, right, it says he was vice president of the United States. Also has his, little individual stone there. That's a, very typical thing of, especially if you had means, financial means in the 1800s or early 1900s. Fairbanks passing away in the early 1900s. And especially there, I'm at 9 years old there, so had a bit of height difference on me.
Yeah.
I put this as a B.
Yeah, I can go with a B. I would probably go a high C, but I can go a B. I can agree on a B on this one.
I got to put it higher than the people that we currently have at C.
Yeah, I agree.
I can't put him with Hendricks or Burr.
I agree. That's a good point. Now we move on to one in the state of New York as well, and that's Levi Morton. So now Levi Morton, Kurt, take it away.
An individual who died on his birthday.
Yes.
So that's he's got a plot there where he's got some stuff going on. It says his different political and diplomatic positions. It has the family marker in back. This is the precise spot there where he's laid to rest. He's got his own tablet. I mean, you can see there's some flourishes on there. It looks like maybe a shell almost. I could be mistaken. That was just what I at the bottom.
It looks to be like some sort of shell or something. Or maybe 4-leaf clovers there.
Yeah, somebody, hopefully is watching that is way more knowledgeable about some of the symbols than I, some people just know everything about all the symbols and everything. And I know some, but somebody, please type in the comments if you're watching. No, Kurt, you are so wrong. I mean, I don't. It's more like it looks like a shell than it is actually.
It is a shell. Yeah,
it's not a shell.
True.
It's just something that resembles it,
Very
and I can't
true.
come up with anything better at this point. But, I'm like a middle, like a C or a C plus on this one, though.
Yeah, I'm gonna go C. I thought it was kind of just an out of the way place too. So nothing very impressive to me.
What do you mean by an out of the way place?
Well, not the accessibility to the cemetery. The cemetery is very accessible. I just thought, like, really, it's not too far from actually Hyde Park, where President Franklin Roosevelt is buried and where he lived. It's not very far from there at all. But outside of that, there's really nothing here. I mean, you're quite a bit away from the city, New York City itself. Just kind of an out of the way place. I mean,
well, I'm gonna disagree with you there. Although I've to this point I've been only once, but I think it's right near Kingston, where we
it's
talked
not
about
too far from Kingston.
I think it's just the other side of the Hudson River. I think you just go over Kingston to Rhinebeck, where Morton is. And I gotta say, what I remember, I got lunch there with my father, and it was I think it was like a quaint town, but in like a wealthy, quaint kind of way. And I remember being very impressed by it. And just a few months after we visited in May 2010, that is actually the town where Chelsea Clinton got married.
Oh wow! Okay, so maybe I just have a bad opinion of it. Maybe I need to go back.
Did you go into downtown at all?
I did not. Nope.
Okay, well, see that I think that right there is your problem.
Okay.
So we thought it was gorgeous, and the downtown, and I learned that subsequently, I believe actors Paul Rudd and Jeffrey Dean Morgan own a candy shop there.
Wow.
So. I'm not saying that you're going to go there and run into them, but you know,
we can go get some candy. I mean, come on.
But, yeah.
Very cool. So, but all right, I agree with you. See, good choice. We're going to move on to Thomas Marshall next, but real quick before we do that, I just wanted to show I did upload. There's what you were describing in that Evergreen Cemetery there in Illinois with the carvings out of the dead trees.
Yes.
So
that's the Hall of Famer.
Yep. Pretty cool stuff. Very
just
cool.
Waiting on the Hatchet Man to get one.
Yes. Very cool. So all right. So here we go. Thomas Marshall, Wilson's vice president. So take it away.
What this country needs is a good 5-cent mausoleum. That's a play on his most famous line about cigars. Another one that I haven't seen in almost 18 years. It's there's nothing too special about it overall.
There's nothing special at all, as you can see here from your picture when you were 9 years old. I mean, it's just kind of a basic mausoleum. There's nothing grand about it. There's nothing spectacular on the outside. I see looks like you're trying to open the door there, but the only thing that might differ between you and I is I got lucky and it looked like there was a crew that was like painting it or doing a little refurbishment to it. So the door was open for me.
Wow.
And I actually got to go inside and see the actual, stone there of where Marshall is buried. So it's not, and then you can see there's some nice stained glass on the back end of it.
Was anybody standing there at the time and they were like, hey, buddy?
No, so there was about 2 or 3 workers there. The door was open and they had a little music on. They were, just working, and I walked over toward the doorway.
Was it Highway to Hell?
No, it wasn't Highway to Hell, though. I was very disappointed. I told them that. But, so I said, is it okay if I walk inside? And, I don't even think I think they were like contracted workers. They're like, yeah, we don't care. So
you can dig them up for all we
yeah, exactly. So I got to walk in, which I think is fairly unique. I don't think a lot of people get to actually walk in and see this open.
Yeah, so you have that on me.
I just got pretty lucky. So I'm sure you were probably going to give this about a D. Am I correct?
I had it at a C, actually.
Okay, so I was going to put it at a C because even though I think it's very, very plain, I had that kind of cool, unique experience, so I have to give it a C. So I'll agree with a C.
Right. I was even at that, and I do think we have to take into consideration that, so you got to see some more of the details in there. So that's on one hand. And then on the other hand, that's not something that the average person, gets to do on an average visit to Vice President Marshall. So I think you got to weigh both of those things, that there's this detail. Who gets to see that detail? I
agree.
Evidently, 100%. TJ and 3 workers.
Yeah, 3 workers. Yes, that were not playing Highway to Hell. So as we move on, we go.
8 left.
Toto, I do not think we're in Kansas anymore, and all the way out in Kansas, we have a Native American Vice President Charles Curtis. So take it away, Kurt.
Yes, biracial vice president, a white and Native American member of the Kansas people. So his is a grave that has, it has his accomplishments on it. You can see there, son of the Kansas nation. Vice president has the vice presidential seal at the top. Also, Shawnee County attorney, U.S. senator, congressman. He was the Senate majority leader for the Republicans. One of the very first ones, actually.
Yeah.
That was something that was really that was a 20th century invention, that position. So, hey, Henry.
Oh, there's Henry making a guest appearance. So, yeah, so this is Charles Curtis. We're looking at this gravesite. That's all the way out in Kansas. That's Kurt when he was younger. What year is this here, Kurt?
That is August 2009. So I was 14 there.
Very nice, very nice.
I
think the vice president. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, wearing my MASH shirt like many 14-year-olds were doing in 2009. So that was my gateway vice president.
There you go.
That was the one, because he's out in Kansas. You and I are East Coast people. Now, if you live out in Kansas or the Midwest, you might not think so much of it. But I'm thinking, I'm glad at 14, I was thinking, when am I going to get out to Kansas again? So I was staring at his name on the Find a Grave list of famous people who buried in Kansas.
Yeah.
Like, what if I decide I want to get all the vice presidents, and then I'll have to go out to Kansas again? It wasn't anything about Kansas, like in a bad way. It was like the timing, the feasibility of it.
Of course, no, I 100% get it.
The trying to be kill two birds with one stone. Economically. I can't think of the exact word I'm looking for right now, but we all know what I mean.
Yeah, but, of course. Logistically, it made sense. So
yeah.
Now,
and then it started from there.
Because of all this, on the back, it's pretty plain except for this backside here. So what are you giving this?
I gave it a B. I think that he's got his he and Annie, his wife, they've got their own little plot there, with some pavement. Again, it's got they've got their own individual stones. They've got the American flag flying. It's got his resume. It's bringing attention that he was a member of a indigenous community. I
agree with you.
I got to give a B.
I agree with you. We're going to keep it at a B. But Thomas Balsersky, who just recently visited Charles Curtis's gravesite, was texting me saying, this has got to be a low C to a C minus. He was not impressed with it, but I told him he'd have to tune in to see what we gave it. And you and I agree wholeheartedly that because of the little bit of a uniqueness of it, I give it a B as well. So there you go. So Thomas, Kurt and I give it a B.
Well, he may have the extra degree there with the PhD, but we're doing the grading tonight.
That's right. That's correct. So we go from Charles Curtis and we move on to another Charles Dawes, there in Chicago. So why don't you take it away, Kurt?
This is a grave that I spent very little time at. This was in February 2012. I was 17. My father took this from the rental car where he was sitting because we had read at the time, I don't know if this is still the case, but we heard that this was a cemetery that was not very friendly to people taking photographs. So I believe we got only a couple graves here. I believe it was Dawes and Oscar Mayer.
Very cool.
That famous pairing.
Yes.
The dynamic duo, people.
Of Dawes and Meyer, yes.
Dawes and Meyer. So he's in a relatively nice spot by a body of water in there.
There's a pond back here, as you can see, yeah.
It's interesting, too, he's got this porch, almost, these steps. It's, protrudes a bit. They're not, he's got that big landing area.
Yeah.
It's got some flourishes. You visited at a much better time of year, where it was, Chicago in February. It wasn't that great visually. I always prefer the photo when possible. I was like the photos of, the spring, summer,
Of
maybe
course.
fall, just like the, the sky's more vibrant, the greenery's more vibrant. If it's, obviously if you're at an outdoor grave. I, you know, and I looked at pictures. I couldn't get a good picture of the interior of this. At least at the time I was working with a digital family camera that had a lens this big. So I don't know if it's something where now in modern day, I could angle maybe a little bit better with a mobile, phone camera, and the lighting might be better. But so I can't even remember what the inside looks like. I don't have a reference from my own pictures because it's literally 95% just a black screen from those the photos I took. I'm gonna give, but on the safe side, I'm gonna put a B minus.
Okay, I can agree with a B because it is pretty grand, and I do like, as we touched on, this little pond in the background. I think it's kind of gives it a really nice, pretty, unique setting. So I agree with a B. I agree with a B on him. So
into that cemetery, if you haven't lightened up about your photography policy, it's like, just let people take their own personal photos. If they don't have to, not for monetary purposes. I'm not saying that. Of course, get permission or pay if you want to put it in a book or something. But some people just want some nice Instagram or website or history pictures or something.
I agree. Just like the one I took here, absolutely. So now we move on from Dawes, and we go to a man who died, and have the audio to actually hear it the moment he died giving a speech, and that is Alvin Barkley. So they're in Paducah, Kentucky. So why don't you take it away, Kurt?
Yeah, I was just talking to a couple of my park ranger friends, one still at the Adams National Historical Park, and one has left there and moved on to a different national park. So I was just telling them about this the other day, and I sent the audio, and the one Jason, who's still at the Adams Park, he said, "That's insane."
It's insane. It is.
And literally, and I'd heard the words, or rather, I'd read the words years ago.
Yeah.
But then it was only within the last year or two that I discovered there is audio of this.
There's audio.
You can literally hear him say those last words at the speech at the college in Virginia, and then the thunderous applause he gets, and then you can actually hear him. It's like exactly 10 seconds later.
Yep.
He goes down, and
he goes down. It's truly unbelievable. Anybody that wants to hear the full audio, go check out my YouTube video on Alvin Barkley, and toward the end of part 2, you will actually hear that full audio in that video. It's quite astounding.
So I'm going to give Barkley an A on exits. That was, he had, and what he was saying too was actually, because he had been at one point the senior senator from Kentucky, and he had been one of the leaders of the Democratic Party in the Senate. Then he was vice president. So he left the Senate, went back to the Senate, and he was the junior senator from Kentucky.
Yeah.
And he said though that he would rather be a servant in the house of the Lord than have this high position in politics. Yep. So then that's where you get the big applause. And then so kind of referencing heaven, then 10 seconds later, Wampy's immediately dead of a heart attack. Yes. And it's on audio. A for exit, D for grave.
I agree. I think it's a D. There is a sign right outside. You can see in my picture here, you see a building back there. There's a roadway, kind of a main roadway right here. And right outside of this cemetery, there is a sign that, talks about Alvin Barkley and how he's buried there. But yeah, it's a D, if not even an F. I'll go with D. But it's pretty underwhelming. There's nothing magnificent about it at all. And we go from Paducah, Kentucky to a very underwhelming vice presidential gravesite, all the way to Iowa to another very underwhelming vice presidential gravesite. And as the famous Field of Dreams scene says, is this heaven? And Kevin Costner says, no, this is Iowa. So take it away with Henry Wallace there, Kurt.
This is one of my most unique experiences.
There it is.
It was a little after midnight during a snowstorm. I can't even really get into this right now. But this was so this is February 2012. So same trip as Stevenson and Dawes, and this was a wild one. Let me just say that I don't think. So I never had a grave experience like that, and I don't think I ever will again.
Didn't you and your father slip and slide all over in the car, if I'm correct?
In our rental car, going backwards, being unable to stop, hoping like, oh my God, we don't crash into any tombstones. And then there was this pond of like hauntingly sounding quacks of ducks, and it was very interesting. Now, struggled mightily to. Now we did find his footstone. Did the best we could, but I can't hold it against. That I can't hold the time of year we went against it.
Yeah.
Because that's on us. We went
to Iowa. They go there with. That's the stone that you probably couldn't see because of snow cover. So there you go.
Right. So it's I got a picture of it, but you can barely read it. You can't really discern any of the inscription of it. But at least on yours, you can see that it mentions the 2 cabinet positions that he held: Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary of Commerce. Also, actually, his father was in a presidential cabinet as well, Henry C. Wallace.
Yep.
And so I think that little touch up would put it slightly higher than Barclay's, however, not a full letter grade. So it would be a high D for me.
Yeah, I think it's just about a D. I mean, it's even.
The only difference between that and Barclay's is that Wallace's again lists his different cabinet positions.
Yes, I agree.
Vice president.
I agree.
If Barclay is a D, Wallace is a D plus.
I agree. I agree. Very good.
Otherwise, they're very similar graves, really.
I agree. 100% very similar graves. So there you go. Very funny story there from Kurt, his visit to Henry Wallace. And now we go from Henry Wallace to a town that unfortunately has been in the news quite a bit over the last month or so here, and that is Uvalde, Texas, where the oldest living vice president actually is buried and lived, and that is John Nance Garner. So, Kurt, take it away, John Nance Garner.
Yeah, so first I'd like to say I hope that beyond thoughts and prayers, there are actual positive actions that are taken. So
yes,
tragic incidents like this that could be prevented do not occur again.
Absolutely.
So Uvalde, 10 years ago, this is where my father and I were on April 20th. 2012, seeing John Nance Garner. Now, his local house and museum was closed at that time, unfortunately, for renovation. So, of course, I always want places to be, structurally sound and improved and upkept. It would just be, nice if the timing had been different for my purposes. But yeah, it's kind of. This one was another one I struggled with a bit because so the stones, it's nice. It's got the seal on it. He and his wife have their own different sections on there. It's got a nice quote from Garner. Has a plaque with the shape of Texas, explaining a little bit more about him. It's in what throws me is more of the setting.
Yeah, here you go. Boom.
I mean, but also that seems very Midwest and Texas.
Yes,
yes. South Midwest area. It's so in some ways it's plain, in some ways it fits. I'm either like a C plus or a B minus. If I got to put it something definitively before we discuss, I'll put it at a C plus, I guess.
I have to go with a C. And the reason is I agree with you on the stone. Nice quote, the vice presidential seal. That's all nice. That would almost put it at a B for me. But I thought just aesthetically, this setting with this hideous radio tower here and these like gas tanks behind the fence here and whatever it is. It's just, and the electric box. It's awful looking. It's just so very, like you said, very barren, kind of what you would expect in the very southwestern part of the United States. It's just not, there's nothing nice about it as far as like aesthetically, except the stone itself. So I think that I would
get banned from Texas, TJ.
Yeah, I know I am. I know.
But yeah, so I think
my brother already has. He lives there. He's already banned me. But I think I have to go with the C.
No, fair enough. Is he so growing up? What baseball team is he a fan of?
So my brother just moved out to Texas about 4 or 5 years ago. He is actually a diehard Philadelphia Phillies fan. So
okay, all right. Because I was going to say, are we going to go into the problematic name of the Texas Rangers or the Houston Asterisks? But I was like, which one? But okay, the Phillies, they've got a wonderful ballpark in Philadelphia.
Nice Citizens Bank, nice place,
and arguably the best mascot. So that's
it's not arguably. I mean, it's either that or the San Diego Chickens. So I mean, you got to go with the Fanatic. But very good there in Uvalde, John Nance Garner, and then we move on to
our final three.
Yes, and a very different contrast because you got to head all the way north up to the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, Minnesota to visit Mr. Hubert Humphrey. So, Kurt, take it away, Hubert Humphrey.
So, this was my last vice president. I was 19 years old and 123 days, although actually this is from the next day, so 124 days. So this is the day after I technically visited, and my father and I dug out Humphrey from the snow, because that's what happens when you go to Minnesota in January.
Oh yes.
So this was interesting. Just a nice little. I liked the metallic nature of the stone.
Give it more. I mean, this is what it looks like. And the thing I love about it, because this is without snow, of course, you can see the little markers here for him and his wife, as you see here. But the thing that I love that you'll see from the next picture is his signature that is etched into this monument. And the of course, nice, beautiful quote there from Humphrey. And if you see from the picture before, it's got all these different seals and stuff around it next to where it's the city of Minneapolis, the state of Minnesota. Yep. I mean, it's got the vice presidential seal. I thought this was really, really kind of unique and cool. I mean, nothing spectacular. I just thought that this wall monument here for him was really, really unique and cool. So what do you think, Kurt? Now, did you get to really get a good view of that wall with the snow all over the place?
Oh, yes, the wall, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. We just didn't, we dug out Hubert and Muriel. And I also like that, even though she actually remarried after his death.
Yeah, it's his Brown there, yep.
Muriel Humphrey Brown there. And she passed away in the 1990s, but still ended up being buried next to the vice president. So it gives us some nice symmetry there, and nice that they're together, because they were very important to each other. So the only thing I really didn't get to see was, the grass and the walkway. So, so absolutely got a fine view of the wall and some good pictures of that. So, especially I think for like modern vice presidents, this is pretty good and interesting compared to a lot of, I mean, look what we just saw with Barkley and Wallace and whatnot. If you want to call somebody who served in the 1940s, at this point died in the 60s. But so I put it at a B. In the B range.
I agree. I definitely think it's a B. Probably even a high B. I thought it was really pretty interesting and pretty cool. I really, really did enjoy it. So I would definitely give it kind of a high B. Really kind of a cool place. Now we move on from Humphrey to one that I am not allowed to grade because it's the only Vice Presidential Gravesite that I've never actually seen. And to be honest with you, I'm sure anybody watching this, none of you have seen it either. I'm willing to bet that because it is on private property. It is on the Rockefeller family estate up there, right in the Sleepy Hollow, New York area. And you can't get to it. It's not accessible. The Rockefeller family has been requested from many people over the years to go see it and visit it, and they deny the request. But yet, the man that is my special guest tonight has actually been there and seen it. As you can see from this photo, as he's hugging the gravestone. So, Kurt, first and foremost, if you don't mind, why don't you take just a couple minutes and tell us how in the heck did you ever get to see this gravesite? Go ahead.
Well, I guess I could say Groucho sent me. That's just that's the easy cop out. We tried several different avenues. We contacted a member of Congress at the time, Senator Jay Rockefeller's office, Rockefeller, Plaza, at 30 Rock in New York. We tried a few different ways, and it wasn't working out. It's pretty well fortified. Not impenetrable, but especially not to a tree, rather. So, giant tree had fallen, crushed the fence. This was back in May 2010. I was 15 years old there. So it's been a while. The statute of limitations has expired. It's not something that I have complicated feelings about it, because I know that I didn't do anything with, intended malice of like I'm trying to harm or disrespect the site or anything. It was just about, I would just like, I'd like a couple pictures and be out. And, I'm not trying to, if I get a book someday, I don't think I'm going to try to be selling the images of their private property or anything. I feel like that's and my father might quibble with me on that word, like, oh, that'd be a big, but it's like I feel like that would be a different kind of disrespectful kind of thing. So I'm just trying to put it out there for, it was like a personal collection thing, and then also try to from a historical standpoint show like, okay, this is what it looks like in modern time, because otherwise there's only one or two pictures of it on the internet, and I think they're from that first year, around 1979. So I think if you Google his grave, I think there were like 3, maybe 4 pictures on the internet of it, and 2 of them are mine. So
yeah, it is quite underwhelming, because here's the pictures that you're talking about on the internet.
Right. So you can see, right. So there's that, and then there might be a variant of one. So and then there's another one over there that's on Pinterest that might be like, it's either a scrunched version of that, or it's at a slightly different angle.
Yeah.
But, it could be 2 different, but you can see there overall, and then it's like, oh, then it's me. And then you see our compatriot. I don't know if you've ever really interacted with him, but Pat Weissend there was in his red sweater, showing the fences that are there. And there was somebody years ago, he had a very in-depth website. His name was Mike Reed, and he used to have a website called The Cemetery Project. I have no idea what happened to him, if he's still around or whatever, but he was very prolific. He was kind of like he was like the me or the Mel. We have our fellow compatriot Mel now, who has been, it really blows me out of the water, because he's been to so many graves over the years. It's unbelievable. But it was kind of like that level of, he was just broad, going to so many different people. So he actually had gotten stopped trying to get to the Rockefeller gravesite by either local police or security for being just at the gate. So I know that it's a very difficult place to get into, and I don't think I'm ever going to see it again. So I'm not going to I'm not going to unless a tree falls and the light is shining down from heaven, beckoning me forth on the yellow brick road again. That's
true.
Again, I did what I accomplished to do. Again, I don't have any desire to go and disrespect or anything. So I did it the once when I was 15 because the tree created that situation.
Yes. And your dad, as your dad called it, what was it? An act
of God, because legally it's like the nature caused that situation to happen.
Yes,
it was a tree from their own property fell onto the adjacent property and crushed the fence that had been there. So that's that. So I don't want to give away too many
I get it.
details per se of like what their property is like and everything. Again,
I get it. What do you give this grave, though? Since you're the only one that can really truly give this a grade, I mean, to me, I feel like you have to give it an A just because of how unbelievably unique. I mean, this is literally this is the unicorn. This is the white whale for us grave hunters, especially ones that do this kind of thing. So, what do you give Nelson Rockefeller's grave?
I'm in the B range.
Okay.
In the B range. I'm on a So the thing is, again, I don't want to give too much away, respect their privacy. But so, it looks like it's wild there like that, but it's really, that's just a part of it. A lot of it is, as you expect, it's well manicured and whatnot. It's just kind of like appropriately wild in the spots that the family would want it
in the setting. I got it. Yep.
Privacy purposes or some aesthetic purposes.
Yes.
The other family, so I mean, I can say this, I guess, because there was like one other picture that showed like 3 stones in a row. So they're pretty much all the same, the family stones. So everybody, has their own stone, but so they're pretty uniform. So which is, in a way you're thinking like, okay, here's this, a wealthy family. Although of course, the more of them there are, the wealth has been dispersed over the years. So they're not, so nobody's as rich as, J.D. Rockefeller anymore. Because it's, so many different generations and family members, but it's, and it's still, you think, oh, it's the Rockefeller family, at this point, going back a certain amount of generations, they had the money and they kind of treated, all equally in there. So, it's a nice, interesting font. It gives it says at least even the town and the states where they were, born. So Bar Harbor, Maine, you got there, New York.
Yep.
So it's that, of course. There's the accessibility thing. That's
it's
the least accessible. So I even, to be honest, going into this, I even had it in the C range.
Wow. Okay.
But I guess I got to put it at a B.
All right, I love it, and congratulations to you. I know it was a long time ago, but that's still one of the coolest things ever. So, moving on to a very unique gravesite, Rockefellers, of course, to something that is just as underwhelming as the person itself, in my opinion, and that is the gravesite of Spiro Agnew. Kurt, take it away here.
There might be a certain Instagram page that might disagree.
Oh.
But anyway, I gave Spiro T. Agnew an F.
Yeah, I gave it an F too. Guys, this is it right here. Just this flat little plaque against the ground. And as you can see, I've shown this picture before in my videos. That's it. Like when you're walking up to it, that's it. If you don't see any of these little American flags or you don't know where you're going, you can drive right past this and have no idea that a vice president of the United States is laid to rest here. You would literally have no clue. Of course, there's really no mention of anything on his gravesite. Yes, he did resign from the office of the vice president, but amid much scandal, of course, and no, not Watergate, other personal scandals. But yes, I agree. It's definitely got to be an F. It's one of the worst, if not the worst, in my opinion. So we agree there.
Yeah. Now, at least when you went, there had been the flags there. When my
Yes.
father and I went,
Yeah, there's
also
nothing there, I
on that
see.
same 7-day trip in April 2010, when I got so many of these vice presidents, there was nothing there. So
Yeah.
we went. Now, this was before the Roadside Presidents mobile app by Roadside America, which I always plug. And if you have an iPhone or iPad, and you're interested in presidential sites, you should always get the Roadside Presidents app.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, unless you're Dr. Joe Fakosh and you have so many photos on your phone that you don't have the storage to download the app. So that's
It's
another issue.
unbelievable.
So, well, Joe loves his sites, as we all
He
do,
does.
and he's very prolific with the photos for his. Got to put them on the social media promoting the Visiting the President's podcast.
Of course, which
That's
is
right.
an
This has just
amazing
turned
podcast.
into the plug part.
Yeah, the plug. Yeah, now we're plugging
you know,
everybody.
yeah,
We're plugging
Roadside
everybody.
Presidents, Thomas Belzerski's book,
Yeah, yeah.
Joe Fakosh's podcast. Promote all the friends.
All the good stuff. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, we go from Agnew, which is an F. What did you have something else to say?
Yeah.
About Agnew?
So I was leading to with all that was back in 2010. So there wasn't a way. So I didn't have the GPS on the Roadside Presidents app to find it. Didn't really have. I don't really know if Find a Grave how in depth that was with the GPS at that time, and even now still can be off, a bit at times depending. But so we went to the cemetery office across the street, and an employee had to drive out with us because even she didn't know where he was, and then she was struggling to find him, and she had been there for it wasn't like it was her second week or first month or something. She had been there a few years, I believe, and so at least you had the flags there, and then either the app or some GPS or some kind. I'm imagining we went in 2010. It was nothing, and also at that time, just a note that a second lady, Judy Agnew, was still alive when I visited. So so she had not yet passed away. We also got legendary quarterback Johnny Unitas there.
Yes. Yep.
And since my visit, another person that has passed away that I want to see there now is another Baltimore Colt, Art Donovan.
Donovan, who I visited as well, yes.
So I got to get him. I got to get second lady Judy Agnew. And I'm going to use this point to plug one more thing. So somebody who has a very interesting book is Donald M. Stinson. It's the most unique book I think you'll find on Watergate, because it's told from his vantage point as an 18-year-old working in the Nixon White House. Not an internship. Wow. He was actually 18 and working there. He previously worked for Agnew, but then Agnew resigned, so then he got repositioned in the Nixon White House, and then he had, as he puts, a ringside seat to Watergate from the vantage point of an 18-year-old who was there, just when Nixon took off, of the helicopter and everything. Ford was. It was so. It's such what I put in my review is it's almost like a Christmas Story, but Watergate. It's in that style, and he's a great guy, and it's like a personal memoir of his. So you're not going to learn anything like super like historical, like the hidden, what happened to the missing minutes from the smoking gun tape or anything like that. But it's his own. It's really fun. So it's downstairs at the White House, and he's got some great anecdotes about Watergate, which in a few days is coming up. The 50th anniversary of the break-in will be in 3 days, June 17th. And he's got some anecdotes about when he went over Agnew's house too. It was just like I think they were sitting on the floor together at a party. Spiro Agnew and and the second lady Judy was there, and so I think Agnew is somebody who had a lot of faults, and I think he's somebody who I would have a lot of personal like political differences with. And I think he, there's a lot of things about him I don't like, but I think that this was something that put at least a little bit of, humanity into him. So it's always, because you're trying to bounce like, okay, so this was a person, what was good about them, what was bad about them, how did, personally and the policies, whatnot. So downstairs at the White House by Donald M. Stinson.
Love
and
it.
that is my last plug I think I got for other people.
That's great. I love it, though. And then, of course, beside presidents that have died, the last vice president to die, which was just, fairly recently in the last year, and that's Walter Mondale. Now, Walter Mondale was cremated, and he was not interred as of up until recently. I mean, we're not sure if he's even interred yet. However, the plan is, and this is the urn here, Mondale's urn at his memorial service. And that urn is being interred at the Lakewood Cemetery in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is the same cemetery that Vice President Hubert Humphrey is interred at. So,
and Tiny Tim.
Yeah, and Tiny Tim, yes.
You want to tiptoe through the tulip.
We don't know any other information, right, Kurt? You haven't seen anything new yet? I mean, these are some articles.
No, so this was something that just came up literally last month. It was 13 months of waiting and trying to determine, okay, so he was cremated. Will his ashes be spread? Will they be kept privately, which is what they have been to this point, or will they be interred somewhere? So last month, after 13 months, we finally got the answer that he will be interred at Lakewood there in Minneapolis. The article that gets into all the details of it is from the Star Tribune.
Yeah, I believe it's this one right here, right?
Yes, my dad reads it a bit as a Minnesota Vikings fan when there's a long-suffering Minnesota Vikings fan. And so the title of the article is Walter Mondale's Urn, Rich in Family and History, and it is by Jennifer Brooks. So you can see her little image right there. And that was the happiest words. And like, it totally made my month.
Yeah, I know. You and I were on the phone when we figured all this out. Yeah.
It said the Mondale family is planning to lay him to rest in Minneapolis's Lakewood Cemetery, just like fellow Minnesota political icon Hubert H. Humphrey. Now, one note I would like to say is that this is going to be another vice president that is not interred with his second lady.
Yes.
Because his beloved wife, Joan, so she was cremated. She was in that same urn.
Yes, she was.
Then when the Mondale sons went to go pick up the urn, they said, this is lighter than we remembered it. They looked in and it was empty. Vice President Mondale, without telling any of his members of his family, had taken the urn and scattered Joan's ashes. So that was something that he chose to do.
It says it right here in the article. It says, we picked up the urn and it was empty, he said. Their father had quietly strewn her ashes out by the St. Croix River at some point, freeing the pot for a new purpose.
And that new purpose it will be to hold the vice president's ashes at Lakewood Cemetery. So interesting. So I don't know if that had been Joan Mondale's personal choice, or that was something that Walter Mondale just wanted to do. And I don't know who had all the input on the various decisions of what happened to Joan and Walter, but for whatever reason, they are being split up in the physical sense in their deaths, at least. And I'm glad that Walter Mondale will have a gravesite that we can visit at some point in the future. I don't know. No timeline. No timeline right now. I have no idea.
Yeah, absolutely. None of us know. Very good insight there, Kurt, on Walter Mondale's final resting place. And of course, both Kurt and myself will be updating on our social media sites and such when we do find out the information and find out an exact location where Mondale is laid to rest. we will be passing it along to our followers and subscribers. And of course, here to kind of finalize this, we have the wonderful website, as I touched on at the beginning, Kurt's website of kurtzhistoricsites.com. As you can see here, it's wonderful. You can go into Grave Directory, Historic Site Directory. I mean, it is a plethora of information and photos. And of course, go follow Kurt on Instagram at KD Grave Hunter. It's a wonderful Instagram account. And Kurt, this has been a lot of fun. It's been a pleasure having you. One last thing I want to just show the audience. It was in our intro video. But one thing that I actually did release a week ago is this right here. That's a brand new logo that's going to become a t-shirt and a sticker tomorrow, actually, on our store website. That is my Dead History logo with all of the vice presidential cartoon heads that I used in my vice presidential series on YouTube. So those are all the vice presidents that Kurt and I just graded and discussed, surrounding my logo. So that will be made into a t-shirt and stickers and mugs and all that crazy stuff will be available for sale starting tomorrow. So I will be sending the link out to that. But again, Kurt, there's your website. Go kurtzhistoricsites.com, everybody. Love it. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
I enjoyed this. And just real quick, just want to see if anybody has some questions. We have Les with a question. Who do you think will be the next VP grave you'll visit? Gore, Quayle, Biden, Pence, Cheney, Harris. I mean, obviously it's going to be Mondale, you and I would think, but who knows? I mean, we can't speculate on who's going to pass, because even though I believe out of that group, Dick Cheney is the oldest.
He's 81, but 81. Yeah, we don't have a death pool going.
Yeah, we don't have a death pool.
Again, I understand the inquisitive nature of it on one hand, but also don't want to be disrespectful in any way. So hope they all live, a million years,
yes,
for their own benefit and also to save TJ and myself money.
This is very true. Another question from Political Facts and Feats. Do you think any vice presidents have graves better than the presidents they served? For example, is Sherman's better than Taft's? Maybe. I mean, Taft's is pretty underwhelming there in Arlington.
I can't remember exactly what we put him at, but also, again, we graded the presidents and vice presidents differently. So also keep in mind, just because somebody had a C as a president doesn't mean that's not better than a B vice president necessarily. We didn't make it, all congruous necessarily. Well, I don't know. I think I like Taft's. Again, it's carved by James Earl Fraser, the Stony Creek granite. I jumped the shark last year when I went to James Earl Fraser's grave. And I'm like, oh, great. Now I'm going to the graves of sculptors of president graves. And I think the one who did Harding's is also in Connecticut or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's where he is. So, well, I think I'm not going to go into the whole list because, we've been at this 2 hours now. But I think the one that immediately jumped to mind is, I think both of Madison's VPs trounce him.
Yes,
and Richard Mentor Johnson over Martin Van Buren.
100%. 100%. Just off the top of my head, I agree. 100% out of that. Where is Happy Rockefeller? Is she with Nelson? I think she is in that family gravesite there. I'm pretty sure Happy is there, if I remember.
I believe
correctly.
So. She was still alive at the time.
She was still alive, but yes, I'm pretty sure she is there. Where somebody asked, Parker Curry asked, where is Mark Twain buried at? He's in New York. Elmira, New York. He's actually in the same cemetery as Heisman Trophy winner Ernie Davis. Which is a very
Roach there too of our gang.
Our gang. Yep. Yeah. So
I've yet to go, but
Ernie Davis. I've been there. Ernie Davis. If you don't know who he is, look it up. I believe he won the Heisman in '61. I want to say something like that. 1961. Syracuse guy. So go take a look. He's buried there too. Very sad story. Agnew's wife, yes, she's buried there with Spiro. Just trying to make sure we don't have anything else. TJ gets an A for his photo. I think more VPs are buried in New York than any other state. Might be Indiana. Indiana might have the record, but
no, well, you got to think with vice presidents, you got to throw in
Van Buren,
Roosevelt, Van Buren,
Fillmore.
That's
very true. That's very true. That's a very good point. And one other question I see here: where's Susan B. Anthony buried at? She's all the way up in Rochester, New York. Same place as it's
Frederick Douglass.
Frederick Douglass, that's right.
That's another grave. A cemetery got locked in. My dad and I visited Frederick Douglass, forgot Susan B. Anthony was there, and left. So,
are you serious? Like you've never been?
No, I've been in the cemetery, totally spaced. But I mean, that was 7 days. That's the same trip where I got all those vice presidents and got, Ford, did the Henry Ford Museum and a bunch of state capitals. So we weren't wanting for places to go there, but no, it just totally slipped my 15-year-old itinerary.
Wow. So real quick, the last one, and then we'll end this, was of all the grade A VP graves, the ones that we gave an A, which, just to refresh everybody, was Clinton, Gary, Johnson, and Sherman. Who would be number one? Who gets like an S grade? In my opinion, I'll go first real quick. Kurt, the one that stands out to me would be Richard Mentor Johnson, just because of the size and the amazing artwork and sculpting on that gravesite. And I loved Frankfort Cemetery there in Kentucky. Kurt, who would you give like a superior grave out of the four?
It's either Johnson or Clinton.
Okay.
I don't. I feel like I feel like I can't let myself skate with not picking one though. Let's see. I guess I'll go with Richard Mentor Johnson.
There you go. So
it's just although also his isn't even like the grandest in that same plot, even because there's a 65-foot tall monument right nearby.
I know.
But I don't know, just the level of detail in it, and I guess the intrigue of again, like it's not an appropriate or respectful bar relief of his alleged interaction, the killing of Tecumseh.
Yeah,
but it's interesting, and it's at a great spot and a very interesting cemetery. I
agree. So last, Zachary Taylor Project. I want to just thank Cam. He sent me these shirts for me and Henry. So guys, go check out the Zachary Taylor Project on Instagram. Another very interesting Instagram account. And then Les asked one more thing. We got to answer his because it's like 5 a.m. for him. Who has the worst vice president gravesite? We gave Wilson, Dallas, and Agnew an F. And I think by far and away, in my personal opinion, it's Agnew. What would you say, Kurt?
Yeah, I'm going to go, man. Historically, I've said Wilson, but now there's that plaque there. So you know what? I'm going to backtrack on Wilson. Dallas, it's just, you know what? I got to go with Dallas. I'm going to go with Dallas over Agnew.
All right.
Another thing I will say about Agnew is that it's so, because it's a a lot of those like memorial parks or gardens specifically that's referencing a place where there's all these flat markers and they're pretty uniform there is the point. So there is that going for it too, as far as you know what? All right, so I'm going to change it. I'm going to go with Agnew and agree with you because of how similar it is to almost every other grave. At least Johnny Unitas has the bench and he's by the pond.
Yeah.
Johnny Unitas doesn't have a flat grave, so good.
Yeah.
But if you told me Johnny Unitas and Agnew have almost exactly the same graves, I would have. It would have been a travesty of history. So
yeah.
So
very true.
All right, so we're gonna say we agree then. I'm not like concrete. This could never change my opinion on whatever. But we'll go with Johnson for best, Agnew for worst.
For worst, agreed. So Guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I know it was 2 hours, but it's been a lot of fun. A lot of great information here by Kurt. Kurt, I can't thank you enough. Go check out that website. Like I said, kurtzhistoricsite.com. And, of course, his Instagram at KD Gravehunter. Uh-oh, he's telling me to wait. What is it?
All right. And the last thing, too, is in case anybody's in the New York area, on Saturday, July 2nd, at 1 p.m., I've been hired as a guest speaker at a National Park Service site. So St. Paul's Church National Historic Site in Mount Vernon, New York. That's in Westchester County, next to Yonkers, right near New York City. Just, not a far ride from Yankee Stadium. And so I'll be there discussing my visits to gravesites, and there's going to be an emphasis on American Revolution related graves, because it'll be July 2nd, the day that John Adams thought would live in the annals of history, but it's July 4th instead, because that's the day that the specific Declaration of Independence was adopted. But so there'll be some American Revolution related graves I talk about, and probably also the famous grave that I went there to visit in April that led to me meeting the park site manager, and thus this guest speaking engagement. So St. Paul's Church National Historic Site, Mount Vernon, New York, on Saturday, July 2nd. 1 p.m. Eastern. If you cannot attend but would like to watch, you can go on their website, go to the calendar for events, and then you contact them to get the link for the live stream.
That's awesome.
You can watch remotely, and if you're interested, it'll be a much earlier time for you.
Yeah, it's true. And what I'll do is I'll put that link to their website in the description of this video. So anybody that's looking for that can't be there live, definitely check that out if you have the time. That's awesome. Congratulations on that, Kurt. I'm looking forward to it myself. Outside chance that Henry and I will be attending that day, so we will.
All right. Well, I get it. There might be somebody else of interest attending that I'll let you know about privately, possibly.
Okay, very cool, very cool. So, all right. Well, Kurt, thank you so much for doing this, guys. Thank you for sticking with us. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'm sure Kurt and I will be doing some more stuff down the road together. So, Kurt, thanks again. Have a good night, everybody, and take care. Bye-bye for now.
So long, everyone.